Would Would you like to do the call? Do you usually do present? Yes.
The roll call.
Roll call. Roll call. Roll call. Yep. So we're going to do the roll call here now. Of course.
All right, Andy Medford.
Here.
Andy Medford is here. Jerry Ford. Jerry Ford is absent. Paul Forstein.
Here.
Paul Forstein is here. Babak Raskafard.
Here.
Babak Raskafard is here. Ryan Schumacher.
Here.
Ryan Schumacher is here. Maggie McCall.
Here.
Maggie McCall is here. Mark Kobos. Mark Kobos is absent. And so we have 3 regular members and 2 alternates present. Let's see. Paul, would you like to appoint Ryan Schumacher and Maggie McCall as voting members this evening?
Yes.
Thank you. And with 5 voting members, we do have a quorum.
Great. We'll move on to the public comment section for items not on the agenda. If somebody somebody in the public there would like to talk about something not on the agenda, now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing nobody, we'll close the public comment section and move on to the public hearing section. Oh, excuse me, skip the minutes, All right, we're going to go back to the minutes here. Now it's time to approve or amend the June 20th, 2018 Board of Adjustment minutes. Any comments on the minutes, fellow board members? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve those.
I'll make a motion to approve the June 20th, 2018 meeting minutes.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, now we're back on track here. We'll move to the public hearing section. Let's do hearing item A regarding the Coca-Cola plant. Lauren, will you be giving another presentation?
Yep.
Okay.
So this will be same one that you guys saw last time. We had a tie vote last time, so this will be a repeat of the internal lighting that there was a tie vote on. So I'll just do a quick refresher, and then you guys will vote again and hopefully not end in a tie.
And just for the record, Mark Kobos, can you confirm that you are present?
Yes, I am present. Sorry for being late.
Thank you.
I maybe should go on the record that I'll be recusing myself from anything on the Coca-Cola variance request for a conflict of interest as well.
Thanks. All right, for the record, Lauren Miller, planner with Community and Planning Services. This is a request by Marie Wilson of Intuitive Architecture on behalf of Coca-Cola High Country for a variance request from Missoula County zoning regulations. The subject property is legally described as Lot A of Missoula Development Park Phase 3D and is zoned in the Missoula Development Park Special Zoning District Light Industry. The property is within the pre-application phase for a 5-lot minor subdivision. Lot lines are preliminary and potentially subject to change through the subdivision process. The applicants are constructing a Coca-Cola warehouse and distribution center and are requesting a variance to allow for internally illuminated signs, which are allowed only for commercial, retail, and service uses that are open for business at night. The property is approximately 18.2 acres and is within the Missoula Development Park. The zoning allows for warehouses and related distribution. The property is within the 1995 Airport Development Park Comprehensive Land Use Plan, which designates this area for commercial and light industrial development. Here's the existing site. The property is currently vacant and surrounded by a mix of commercial development and open space. The topography is relatively flat with little vegetation other than grasses on site. The variance request from the applicant is to allow for an internally illuminated sign. The Missoula Development Park Light Industrial Zone permits an externally lit or backlit sign, and the reflected light shall not exceed a 1-foot candle. Here's that proposed site plan of the signage for the building. The channel letter sign proposed is a total of 160 square feet and does not exceed the maximum allowance per zoning. The proposed warehouse, however, is not a commercial, retail, or service use and is not open for business at night, according to the application. The sign will be on the north end of the building, facing the interstate and the existing residential across from the interstate. The applicant did not include details in the application as to whether or not there would be set hours as to when the sign would be on or off, so we reviewed the application with this knowledge. The topography is relatively flat, so that does not play into a factor as to what type of sign is needed on the warehouse. The internally illuminated channel letters are not a necessary function for the use of the warehouse and is contrary to the zoning regulations. Here's some photo examples provided by the applicant to help visualize what the sign would potentially look like. The proposed sign is 9 lumens per module and will be red in color. These photos provided by the applicant shows views of the proposed warehouse and the sign from surrounding areas. The top left photo gives an example for a potential future building between the warehouse and the interstate. This example does show that the new building would not block the sign. However, this would be if the new building would be in that exact location and height. The photo 4 on the bottom right corner shows the view from approximately 3,500 feet, the furthest distance from the warehouse in this group of photos from a residential neighborhood, and this shows that the sign would still be visible at that distance. Agencies and adjacent property owners 300 feet were notified of this proposal, and we did not receive any comments of concern. And based on that, the factors that I presented and those included in the staff report, staff is recommending denial of the variance request. And just a reminder, we did vote on this last time and it did end in a tie vote. So we are bringing it back to you guys for more discussion.
Thank you very much. Would the applicant's representative like to present any information to us?
Now, can you hear me? Okay. Again, for those of you who weren't here last time, I'll just give a brief synopsis of Coca-Cola. They are definitely a company that focuses on safety. We went through a lot of exercises on the site to maintain that the drivers, the truck drivers, and the circulation for the public were separated. Part of that focus on safety is driver awareness. Which is basically what the signage would contribute to. While the size and location meets the zoning requirements exactly, the lighting source itself does not. If this particular building had a retail use in it, then we would be allowed to have this specific lighting source. The lighting for the sign that we are proposing has both lower lumen level than the backlit sign, which we would be allowed to have, and the square footage technically of the area that would be lit in the allowed sign, or sorry, the allowed lighting source versus the lighting source that we're proposing is less. And that's really the summary of the issue. So do anybody have any questions?
Well, I don't have any questions. I guess technically we're supposed to, let you finish whatever you want to present, and then we would open up the public comment section, and
Okay.
then board deliberations, and we'd ask you
Okay.
questions. So if that's it for you, then I'll open it up to public comments to anybody else in the crowd who would like to participate in this conversation. Is there anybody who'd like to talk about the issue at hand? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment section of the hearing and we will move to board deliberations. Maybe as we transition into this section, Mark, now that you're here and a member of the group, I would assume that you're going to recluse yourself again.
Yeah, because of a conflict, I will not be able to participate in this just like last time. So thanks for taking over and taking care of the duties on this, Paul.
You're welcome. Well, thanks for that, Mark, and let's go ahead and move to the board deliberation section. I guess I could explain, I was a positive vote last time for the proposed variance. There's a couple reasons why. One is I don't see a problem with the internally illuminated sign. It's the same size as they could have without illumination. If they were a retail use, it could be illuminated. I personally think an illuminated nice Coke sign in a new building is just going to bring more attraction and the type of positive growth that our community could benefit from. Growth in the commercial, industrial, growth in that area. Basically, the development park has laid in a lot of ways, it's been underutilized for a long time, and so I'm excited to see this project go forward. I think having the light there is certainly, I don't see it as an offensive nuisance, and so if it brings a little bit of attention to this new operation that's investing in our community, I think that's a positive, and so those are the general reasons why I supported it, and and so those are my comments.
So I was on the opposite side of that vote. I agree with Paul. As far as Coca-Cola coming into the community and being a positive, providing positive growth in the area. However, they have the opportunity to put a sign in and meet zoning that's the same size and also illuminated all day long and all night long. And it's my understanding that's their intent to do so. If they were a retail operation, Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, they would have to turn off an internally illuminated sign at the end of business hours?
Yep, that's correct. In zoning, it reads that once the business is closed, the sign also has to go off. So, correct.
So I think we're opening things up to, there's going to be businesses in that area right now that are turning off their signs when their business is closed. And this sign at Coca-Cola, if it was internally illuminated, would not need to be. So I think we need to take that into account. That's where I'm at.
I have one question for staff and one for the applicant. I wasn't here last month. Just so I understand, if you don't mind going back to the picture of the sign itself, just so I understand, so I see what this looks like internally lit, and then I've heard the reference to a backlit. Would that be something akin to like a billboard sign, or what exactly is permitted without a variance?
Yeah, so what you see here with the internally lit sign, obviously there's modules within the letters that light it up. An externally lit or backlit sign, well, the backlit's not going to add any additional square footage and just would be lit from the back and not internal to the side. And of course, externally, like a spotlight onto it. So, yeah, backlit is just, not within the letters themselves, but.
You'd essentially be seeing the glow from the light on the perimeter of the logo.
Yep.
Silhouette, more or less.
Yep.
Okay. And then the question I had for the applicant is I was looking, obviously, I wasn't here last month, but I was looking through the minutes, and I understand one of the reasons the company is looking for this variance is for wayfinding, to help drivers. And I was a little confused because I assume this is going to be a bottling facility, and are the drivers local coming? I mean, the product is manufactured there and distributed in the area, or are these, drivers coming from other parts of the country? I'm just trying to figure out that particular aspect. It was a
No,
little bit
I
of a
understand.
head scratcher.
The majority of the drivers will be local. They do have, they're a regional supplier, so they have drivers that go to Kalispell, drivers that come from other facilities at Casper, et cetera. But the majority of their drivers will be local.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I voted no last time as well for similar reasons as Ryan, as well as denials being recommended, and I don't see a legal reason to approve it outside of the recommended denial.
Any further comment on the matter? If there's no further comment, then I would entertain a motion regarding the project. It's on your screen.
Fancy, I'm not used to it. Do you want me to do it, or do you want? Okay. All right, we'll try this again. I move that the Board of Adjustment deny the variance from County Zoning Regulations, Section 6.08 E.3.B.4 to allow for internally illuminated signs in a light industrial zoning district. The property is legally described as Lot A of Missoula Development Park Phase 3D and zoned in the Missoula Development Park Light Industry. This denial is based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law found in the staff report and the public testimony, and is subject to the following conditions. Do we need these conditions? Did we already approve these? I'll just read
Yeah,
them.
let's go with them. Let's do it.
The warehouse and distribution center must be in substantial compliance with the site plan as submitted. All other necessary permits administered by agencies other than Community and Planning Services shall be obtained by Coca-Cola High County. These permits may include, but are not limited to, building, electrical, mechanical, approach, and sanitation permits.
All right, assuming we got that right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on the matter before we go to a vote? Seeing none, can we just clarify that a yes is a denial? So if you say yes, then you are denying the variance. Just so everybody's clear. Okay, great. All right, let's do a roll call vote.
Paul Forstein,
No.
Babak Reskafard,
Yes.
Ryan Schumacher,
Yes.
Maggie McCall.
Yes.
With 3 yeses, the motion passes as denied.
All right, thank you. All right, and then I'll turn the mic over to Mark, and then I'm going to recluse myself so I can give the presentation for the following project. So, thank you.
Thanks again, Paul, for taking care of things. So we'll be moving onward here to the next hearing for the Deer Creek Storage Unit Special Exception and Variance Requests. So if we can start, Lauren, with a staff report on that.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. For the record, Lauren Miller, planner with Community and Planning Services. This is a request by Paul Forsting of Territorial Landworks, Inc. on behalf of Lane Sorensen for a special exception and 2 variance requests from Missoula County zoning regulations. The applicant wishes to construct a 385-unit residential mini warehouse located off of Deer Creek Road east of Missoula. The applicant is also requesting 2 variances from Missoula County zoning regulations to vary from the fencing height requirement and parking spaces required. Here's a view of the subject property. The property is legally described as Tract 1 of COS 5850 and is located south of Interstate 90 and east of Missoula. Access to the property is off of Deer Creek Road. Here's a view of the zoning and surrounding zoning. The property is zoned CRR1 residential and allows for residential mini warehouses as a special exception. The development is within the 1998 Urban Comprehensive Plan, which designates this parcel as residential 2 dwelling units per acre. Here's some photos of the existing site currently. The property is vacant and is a total of 66.12 acres. The location of the proposed mini warehouses is relatively flat with little vegetation other than grasses. There is a small existing berm. You can kind of see it in this photo here towards the north end of the property along Deer Creek Road. As you move west along the property, the elevation does increase along with the vegetation. The surrounding uses of the property are the interstate, a vacant lot to the east that is in the city of Missoula's jurisdiction and is zoned residential, a shooting range to the south, and railroad tracks. The property is also near the Milltown State Park and also U.S. Forest Service public lands to the south. Due to the surrounding uses of the property and the noise created by these uses, residential development has not been ideal for the area despite the availability of public services to the property. Here's the proposed site plan for the storage unit facility. There will be a total of 7 storage unit buildings for a total of 385 units. The total development area is approximately 8.63 acres. A landscape buffer 5 feet wide and 5 feet tall is proposed along the eastern and southern end of the property as required by zoning. A full landscape plan will be required at the time of zoning compliance permit review. The applicant did provide information in the application that buffer will consist of a mix of lawn, shrubs, deciduous trees, and will meet the 75% opacity that is required in zoning. The parking will be provided within the development itself. Here's a view of the proposed buildings themselves and the floor plan. The building will be a total of 11 feet and 6 inches in height. Aside from the special exception that the applicant is requesting, they are also requesting for 2 variances from the zoning regulations. Zoning requires a fence not to exceed 6 feet in height, and the applicant is allowing a variance to allow for a fence 10 feet in height. The second variance that they're requesting is from the parking requirement. Missoula County requires 1 parking space per 25 units, which would amount to a total of 16 parking spaces. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow for only 10 parking spaces. So the first variance request is to vary from the fencing height. The proposed layout shown here shows a 10-foot chain link fence around the entire perimeter of the property. The 10-foot of fencing would include a barbed wire fencing material around the top of the fence. The applicant noted that the fence height requested is for security purposes, as this development has access from either side and can be accessed from a rural section of Deer Creek Road. It is also adjacent to railroad tracks and vacant development. The second variance request from parking spaces are shown here in the top right corner near the entrance of the development. The applicant noted that they will have limited customers who actually need to use these parking spaces. Instead, most customers will proceed directly to their storage unit where they can park adjacent to the building and therefore reducing the amount of parking spaces that are needed. The parking area will also be screened and landscaped per zoning requirements. Here's a visual buffer provided by the a visual provided by the applicant of what the fencing will look like. The fencing will include slats to meet that 75% required opacity. Agencies and property owners 300 feet of the proposed development were notified of the proposal. Most agencies provided no comments of concern for the proposal. We did receive a letter from Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, which you guys will see in front of you, that was emailed out to you. It was received after my staff report was mailed out, so it did not make it in the staff report. But for the record, you guys do have it in front of you. As I mentioned earlier, the property is adjacent to nearby public lands, including the Milltown State Park, the Missoula County Parks, Trails, and Open Lands, along with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, both commented on the need to further develop the trails to connect both future trails and existing trails. These proposed easements that you see in front of you here on the screen is from a past proposal on the same piece of property in 2015 for a solar field. The applicant and these agencies are currently in conversation regarding the importance of the connectivity of these trails and potential for future easements through the property to connect these trails. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks also questioned if the proposed development is consistent with the existing neighboring development. And regarding the fencing height, FWP noted that deer can jump an 8-foot high fence versus a 10-foot fence. If they try and jump a 10-foot fence, especially one with barbed wire, they're more likely to be caught. How likely they are to jump also depends on the vegetation attractants on the other side of the fencing. This comment was addressed in condition number 2 to allow for only an 8-foot fence and one with a smooth top barbed wire. City of Missoula Park and Open Space Planning and Development noted that with the availability of services to this parcel, this area should be used for residential development. They also hope that they can negotiate a public trail easement on the parcel. The adjacent property owner to the east, Bob Brew, commented via a letter regarding the proposal that was attached to the staff report. Mr. Brew noted that the nearby public spaces and trails are a public environmental amenity and the public should enjoy a rural landscape in this area. He requested a berm be built that spans the length of Deer Creek Road and be higher than the 5-foot required visual buffer. Once again, this visual you see here is from the past project, and it shows the berm that Mr. Brew was requesting and the conditions 5 years after the matter. Staff is not currently recommending a berm along Deer Creek Road, but feels that the landscaping that is proposed with the development will be sufficient for buffering the development along Deer Creek Road. I also received 2 letters yesterday from property owners that you have in front of you. I received them after the staff report. They were also emailed to you for the record, but just to summarize them, Judy Matson, who is part of the Milltown Community Council or Bonner Community Council, was requesting to deny the variance request for the special exception and variances to build the Deer Creek storage units. She says that it does not meet the intent of the CRR1 zoning district and that there's no residential development across from the proposed site for this for the storage units to serve. The site is also on soils of local importance. She also said that this will cause unnecessary traffic in a rural area and that the area is already served by a number of other nearby storage units. And the next letter that you guys have in front of you is from Gary Matson. He also was urging denial of the variance request and special exception. He also noted that it does not meet the intent of the CRR1 zoning district. He also said that storage units do not contribute to a sense of place, to a sense of community, or promote a pride of place. So with that, based on the factors that I've presented and those included in the staff report, staff is recommending approval for the special exception and conditional approval of the variance request. And that concludes my staff report. Thanks.
Thanks, Lauren. At this time, Mr. Forsting, if you would like to speak to this proposal.
Yes, thanks, Mark. Paul Forsting, Territorial Landworks. Can I grab the mouse from you? All right. We'll see. Oh, all right. Yeah, cool. All right. Yep, I'm Paul Forsting. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. Well, actually, the applicant is the solar farm owners. But the intended applicant, I guess you'd say, or the future applicant, the owner, the future potential owner of this site is Lane Sorensen, and he's here today with me. This is my second opportunity to give a presentation to the Board of Adjustments in my 11-year career, and so I'm glad to be here. And this is the second time this project, or this property, it's my understanding, has been in front of the Board of Adjustments. The last time it was in front of the Board of Adjustments, it was here for a solar farm. And that solar farm looked like this. They were proposing to use 40 acres of the site for solar panels, and that's what that looks like on the site there. The Board of Adjustments had approved that project, but unfortunately, that use was never followed through with. Andy and I were chatting about it a little bit, and I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I think the funding or the way they were going to generate revenue from the solar, from this solar plant, I guess you'd call it, or solar array, wasn't feasible. It turned out not to be feasible, so they bought the property and didn't end up using it. The property before then has been vacant. It's 66 acres. It sat there, and across the street, there's another piece of vacant property. Lauren, you mentioned public services being available. I think they're a little bit further up the road over in Deer Creek, or excuse me, in Canyon River. So they are pretty far away to extend down here. If they were right outside in the road, I think people would be more interested in doing residential development. I do know that David Edgell of Edgell Homes and WGM Group had looked at the feasibility of actually developing this site for residential. I'd seen a layout at one time. I'm not sure if they ever maybe they had a pre-app, I'm not sure. But they determined it, at least by their non-action, as being non-feasible at that time. It is an interesting site, especially when you talk about residential. We've got the Deer Creek shooting range here. I believe that's what's called, the Deer Creek, and it's pretty prominent. If you're out in the area, you can hear it. People are enjoying the range there. There's the Montana Rail Link is actually the swath of land here separating here. So this is an active train route. There's our property, then sits I-90. And so it's, when you think about a residential property and the cost of development and then selling those houses, using this as primary for residential hasn't been in anybody's cards, and it's been for sale for that and looked at, and I guess you'd say it's putting 100 houses, although they might fit 120, I guess, was zoning. 100 houses here, the investment hasn't been one that somebody's wanted to act on. You could say, well, we got Canyon River on the other side. What did they do to make their property so attractive? And well, they've got the rail. Instead of a shooting range, they have a beautiful section of the Clark Fork River. They're a peninsula, and then they built themselves a golf course. And so they've done whatever they had to do to make that an amenity-driven piece of property. Our property here, this site is going to take up about just under 9 acres. And to be honest with you, we're hoping that some of the primary users here are folks who live at Canyon River, who have their garage and have maybe a boat or a motor vehicle. That's really what Lane's intent was to say, hey, this would be a great site for people to put their recreational vehicles, things they don't want to have in their cars. So, people at Canyon River in that area certainly, presumably could afford such things, and they would like close access to this, to those, so they would have a good access here. Lane's intent is to make this a really nice storage unit facility, so that it would be something that clientele would be interested in. Other folks who might be interested in it, anybody who's going up the Sealy Swan area for recreation, they might find it good to put have it convenient to put their boats and recreational stuff here. We've got a mix of unit types in here, but the hope would be as many RV and boat storage spaces as we could have. Those can come in a kind of a 3-walled. That front picture I showed you, and I can go back to it. There's different ways of doing that, but yeah, we click back. Lauren, two back, please. Yep. So something like that. There's one. The way these storage units, this is a third storage unit I've worked on in the last year, so I know getting to know a little bit more of them. And the way they like to build them out is to see what kind of customers are interested. And so, although we're seeking approval of the entire project here today, we're going to build it incrementally. We'll fence the whole area off. We'll do absolutely everything necessary with regards to the infrastructure. We'll adhere to all of our permits, but when we build the buildings, we'll do that to scale. So if this type of use is what's in demand, we'll build more of these instead of smaller units. You know, we don't really see this as the smaller storage unit type where you're going to have somebody might just put limited stuff there. We're expecting these to be recreational vehicles and people who have, who've got bigger stuff that they want to store there. So anywho, that's the intent. You can see the footprint's a lot smaller than what the storage unit facility was using. You can see that we've got large gaps all around our site. Our fence is in say up by the Deer Creek Road where that easement's the widest there. We're 75 feet approximately off where our fence will be from where the road is. There's a big swath there. There's a 25-foot setback at least from the road and where our fence is of just open space. And so when you talk about wildlife passing through the area or potential future trails, there's plenty of room for them. Lane is absolutely open to negotiating with the Parks Department about a trail, about possible future park area. We met with Garrick from the County Parks Department and we met with Elizabeth from the city. Elizabeth said the city would be very much interested in acquiring some of this property for parks, which is great. I mean, the property's for sale right now for 66 acres, and so I'm assuming they don't want to buy it at that. But if our client was to buy it to use a portion of it, it might become feasible for them to buy a portion of it, and they see it as a possible addition to their inventory of open space. And so we think that's a cool component of the project. Our client here, or my client's gonna. He's only going to buy the project or the property if this project's approved. And so when we talk about what can be there and what else is down the line, well, he's buying it with the primary intention of doing this facility here. Then after that, he's excited about what the possibilities might be. If we were to have the project denied here today, then his use wouldn't be fulfilled, and then he would look at other things. But that's the site there. This is some of the same pictures that Lauren had showed. This is the university storage facility. This is in Bonner. This is one that our company worked on. This is their fence. They didn't have any type of screening from our project is required to have a 75% opacity buffer, which I had to look into what that meant. That means that's what you can't see through. 75% is you're not able to see through it. And so I found a fence what that looks like. We talked about how we would achieve that. We'll do it in a combination of, we'll kind of get that defined as part of our final plans, but it certainly could be easily accommodated with slats. They sell them at 75%, and so you go there. We also are required to have a landscape buffer, so that would be an addition. There already is a portion of a berm out there, but not but a segment of the Deer Creek area. Creating a higher than 5-foot berm along all of Deer Creek would take some substantial grading. It's my assumption that when the solar farm agreed to do it, they've got a much larger disturbance area, and so they were probably going to flatten out a lot of that property. We're trying our best to keep our property on the flattest portion up front, so there's not a ton of grade differentiation there. So it would be problematic for us to have to go find all that fill and create a huge buffer. I believe big buffers like that are more appropriate in an industrial application. That's where you see them. You see some, more heavy duty operations. You'll see, it's not uncommon to see that kind of earth and berm in front of them. But we certainly feel, we don't think our site is all that offensive, and we certainly don't think that substantial of a berm is necessary here. It's not a requirement in the regulations. One interesting, I guess it's worth noting that this is considered a residential mini warehouse, and that, what does that mean? Well, that means that generally it's associated to residential uses. It's something that would be focused on residential people's needs. It's not a commercial or industrial warehouse. It's for people to basically like an extension of their garage, if you will. And so although it's not a single family residence, it's something that's been contemplated in zoning as being permissible in a zone if you get this review and approval. And so I don't see this as an industrial use. It's not, it's clearly a commercial endeavor, but it's not, a retail or anything like that. If you think of what a residential use would generate for traffic or whatnot, This won't have anywhere near that level of traffic. A house creates 8 to 10 trips a day. You might go to your storage unit once a month if you're really tinkering with stuff, I think. But maybe you go there more. But I mean, you're certainly not on that, thousands of trips per day that would be created by a residential subdivision. We can look at the fence. This height here, I'm not exactly sure, but it exceeds 6 foot. I'm 6'2". So if we got a 6-foot fence, that's a fence that's somewhere right here. The goal of our fence is to keep it safe, to keep people out of there. The idea of a good fence is to keep people from attempting to get in there. If we can do that, then we're going to be successful in keeping the potential for crime, not only for the security of the belongings there, but just for the convenience of the police department from not having to respond, or the sheriff's department not having to respond. This site it is interesting in the fact that somebody could approach the site from Patty Canyon. They could drive up Patty Canyon, come down Deer Creek Road, and there's really nothing between here and there where they could, do some type of nefarious activity and then go back. And it's not easy for anybody who's in Patty Canyon to see the connection between that route. And that's I think something pretty unique and some extra reason for security measures. Most storage unit facilities that I'm aware of have a fence. This one was permissible in the county, but not through zoning, because this is unzoned property. So that's why they don't have the slats, and that's why their fence is higher than 6 feet. But and so we're looking for something similar. 10 foot is what we said. Hey, we wouldn't go higher than 10 foot. When we talk about 8 foot, seems fine. We definitely want barbed wire on top of it. I mean, an 8-foot fence without barbed wire is going to be it's going to be limited on its impact. I'm not sure about the deer jumping the 10 foot or what, or however. I'm interested in that, but our fence is going to be in that 8 to 10 foot range, and it's going to have barbed wire on it, or if we're allowed to build that high. If we look at our site here, we've got 385 units. It's an interesting way of calculating parking for a storage unit. 1 per every 25 spaces. That's quite a few spaces. Anymore, these type of storage facilities don't necessarily have to have an office. You can go online, get a combination for the front gate, and be assigned a storage unit without ever stopping, essentially. I mean, you pull up to the gate, you type in your code that you've paid for online, and you can have access to a storage unit. It's that easy. Some of the places have just a kiosk in there where you go in and you put it in there, and so there's not necessarily an employee always out there. We are going to have an office here. We'll seek approval of a drain field. And so we did put 10 parking spaces, and we think that's quite a bit for this use. If we look at, this is the university storage again in St. Bonner. They put 3 spaces in, as far as I can tell. This is what they were built with. They have 616 units there, so they're going to get a lot of use there. And they've, if you park in there's one of our trucks there. It looks like it's parked right in the middle, but if you park in the right spot, you fit 3 cars there. We've got 10, and so we're triple this. We think that's going to be plenty of room for anybody who's coming and going. As Lauren explained, each one of these acts as a garage, and so once you're in, you can park right in front of the door there. It's really kind of the whole thing's basically a parking lot if necessary. So again, this is the picture of the unit, and I'd appreciate it, and appreciate your review, and let me know if you have any questions for me. Thank you.
So to continue with this variance and special exception request, we can hear now from anybody else that would like to speak in the public to this variance and special exception request at this time. So if you have anything to say, you're welcome to come up to the mic. Please make sure to let us know your name first, and potentially if you could just go ahead and spell your last name so that we would know who you are for the record. It would be helpful. So anyone else like to speak to this? Okay, seeing none, so we'll close the public hearing portion of this hearing at this time, and we'll go ahead and have some discussion with the board. and, or if there's any questions. I guess I Paul, have a couple of questions regarding some aspects of this variance and a special exception request. If you were required to install the parking to meet the requirements, how many spaces would it have required? Can you tell me that?
16?
16?
16, that's my understanding. Yep, 16.
Okay.
Yeah, 16.
I just wanted to understand the depth of the request as far as how much they were asking for. And then secondly, with regard to the fencing, I didn't follow everything there, but because the project placement of where it is not unzoned, then there was how did we fall to the 6-foot fence? So can you just explain that for everyone here, just so we understand how we got here?
Absolutely. 6 foot is the fence height permissible in Missoula County zoning. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'll go to I have a slide with the full, that's how it reads in our regulations.
And so,
Unzoned that Paul referred to was the university one. I think that's what you were talking, that.
correct, that falls on unzoned property.
Okay.
But it's there in East Missoula Bonner within those buildings. Yep.
Okay, so the requirements for this project, if we were following the zoning requirements, would be no more than 6 foot?
Yes, and I even maybe to be even clear, it's required to have a fence no higher than 6 feet. Is that right? It's required to have a fence?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so is there, with this proposed motion for approval that we've seen tonight from staff, the staff report that says that, they're thinking that it's fine to give a variance for that, but to go to 8 feet in lieu of the 6, but not to the 10-foot. And I would like you to specifically speak to that aspect of this hearing tonight, whereas right now, if we go with the recommended motion for approval, it would be for an 8-foot fence. Okay, so do you have anything?
That's correct. That's what the conditions read. We requested a 10-foot fence that would give us the flexibility we think to build a safe fence, but 8 foot. Talking with Lane, 8 foot would be fine, but we do want the ability to have barbed wire on it. It's a very common application for a fence. You see them. They put them around utilities. They put them around storage units. We saw that the university storage had it. So the condition as written says no barb, if I'm reading it right.
So
It's saying the top
ahead.
wire only.
just the top wire.
So condition reads as the topmost wire fencing. So everything, barbed how you'd like it to be. And then that very topmost barb would need to be, this barbless twist cable or coated wire. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, in there, they've got a good brochure of different fencing guidelines. And that's where we got that from, is allow for barbed, but that topmost, if a deer were to jump it, you've got that smooth topped wire so they wouldn't get caught up in the barbed wire fencing.
And if you read that, I read the Living with Wildlife packet too, and it's great. And it says if you're going to have a fence, 6 foot is a bad size. I mean, it says that. It says that's the worst size you could have because it's the most inviting and problematic for height. And so if you're going to do it, go higher, go 7 or 8. They said.
So Paul, could you speak to whether or not you would be willing to provide a fence with a smooth wire on the top?
I know that Lane would be, I guess, at the end of the day, be fine with it, but we appreciate a barb on the top. It's a common application. I think, if you were to climb a fence, the one you'd be worried about, or I'd be worried about, is that top barb. And I don't personally think I'd see a deer getting caught up at 8 feet high. I mean, there is no vegetation inside of our, as part of that discussion, it was, it depends on what's inside there is how desperate they'll be to get in there. Well, there'll be nothing tasty inside the Deer Creek storage facility. It'll be pavement and storage units. I mean, there won't be. I'm being completely honest with you. There's plenty of room around it, and so if that's what it's necessary to do it, to get it approved, yes, I can. That would be acceptable, but we'd ask you for. We'd like as much security as we possibly could have, and having that top level as a barb would provide that. So.
Okay, thank you. That's the rest of my questions. Anyone else have any questions for Paul?
I had some questions for Paul, but first, does staff have a copy of Chapter 4? I just wanted to read the design standards for residential mini warehouse.
I can read, I have a copy here if you'd like me to give it to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to look at 403G, just to see what get a better picture, especially in light of.
Well, and I guess on that note, I did have a question along those lines, whether storage units are historically considered residential mini warehouses.
It appears that it's allowed as a special exception in the
Yes.
zoning, so it is standardly allowed as a special exception within the zoning for
Yes.
CRR1, so.
Yeah. So you'll see if you flip to chapter 2 in that zoning regulations book, all of the residential zoning do allow for these residential mini warehouses as special exceptions. So
Yeah, so I'm looking at that. And I guess in my mind, a residential mini warehouse seems very different than a 300 storage unit facility.
I guess the question is, the regulations talk about, and I don't know the answer to this, talk about residential mini warehouse, and then there's also commercial mini warehouse. I guess what's the difference, or? are
yeah, and
those
there
defined?
should be, if you want the exact definition, sorry.
I guess let me add that our first question was, is what we're doing a residential, does it fall within that category? That was our primary question right away, was, hey, are we a residential mini warehouse? And the answer was yes. That's my understanding of what the zoning officer has determined it is.
I guess while staff is looking up that information, question I had for you, Paul, is that, as I understand, at least the recommendation as written from staff, if the special exception was granted and/or, I guess, the variances only come into play if the first is granted, the parcel is roughly 60 acres and this development is around 8, and so, just doing some quick math, it's only 15% of the parcel. The variance the recommendation as written is not so limited, and so I'm just trying to get a sense of, the size of the parcel, the recommendation, and so I guess my question perhaps for you is, would the request be limited to what's proposed in the design submissions, or would it be for the entire 60-acre parcel?
That's a good question, and yes, you are tied to the site plan you present. And so what we presented here today can't expand, and so we've left plenty of room in it. The site itself is 66 plus acres. The size of it is of our entire footprint, where our fence goes around, is about 8.9. And so we wouldn't be able to submit a building permit with our fence being pushed out any further, with that area being with any different dimensions or with any more units. We may reduce the number of units as we build out. But we wouldn't be able to increase the number of units if that is, we could certainly add it in there per the site plan. I mean.
Yeah, but I guess I didn't know how that, I guess I was thinking more about just this special exception. I mean, I guess the variances are tied to the plan. Would this exception be tied to the plan as well, or would it apply? So in other words, if you didn't need if you wanted to expand on the other 50 some acres, and you complied with zoning regulations, could you still go ahead with additional?
No, it's my understanding any additional use, any additional expansion of the project would bring us back here through the same review process. So if we were to say we wanted an additional unit within the facility, or if we wanted to expand it and say, okay, this is just phase 1 of a 66 acre, which I've heard no discussion of, then all of that would require resubmittal and approval, Lauren, and then then I'd say even the discussion about the variances we're reviewing, it's my understanding, it'd be my expectation that these variances are specific to this project. Yeah, so I wouldn't be getting
variances.
extending
I
the-
understand, but if you're doing 6 feet and you had the right number of parking spots, could you? But I guess I'll let staff chime in.
Yeah, I guess, and I may not be 100% clear on this either, but I believe if you were going to do an additional development on the other side of the property for warehouses, you would need to get a special exception, come back to this process. So what's approved here is what you're approved for through the special exception.
That's my understanding. I wouldn't have any, if a client came to me, or it's my understanding based on being on this board and representing projects that you've only got approved what your site plan says and based on the conditions that are approved here tonight. We have talked about what we possibly do with the rest of the site. There's a lot of property left. And so we were excited to hear about what the parks wanted to do with it because we could see that as a win-win. If they wanted to buy a section of it and add it to the city's parks inventory, that would be great. And we've also talked about putting a couple houses, 2 or 3. But we're not sure. We have to go through a feasibility kind of component, and that's, it wouldn't be the realtor thinks he can sell 2 or 3 houses over here, but who knows, right? It's pretty loud, to be honest with you, so.
And to go back and answer your guys' questions regarding the residential mini warehouse and commercial mini warehouse, we don't have exact definitions for them in zoning, and they do seem a little bit weird because they are very similar, and you can do, similar sizing in the commercial mini warehouses versus the residential. I think the intent of the residential in zoning is that the appearance of them conforms to that residential development that it's in. Obviously, looking at this one, there's not a lot of surrounding residential development there, but that's sort of more the intent of the quote-unquote residential versus the commercial.
Thanks, Lauren. And I think, too, that this motion can be modified to a not any other future
Mark,
development.
I think your microphone turned off.
So I'm sorry. I think, sorry for my mic went dead on me, but I think that if we really want to make sure that it's really clear of what we're approving, if the special exception is approved, is to change a little bit of the language in the approval, just to say that it applies to this specific project, just so that we can make it clear, more clear, if in fact that motion is presented, okay?
So I've got a lot of questions. Obviously, this parcel has been before us on a previous occasion, and the surrounding interstate, train tracks, shooting range, it's not, I can understand where it'd make development tricky. Some of the public comments, at least the ones we received here in written form, not at the hearing, it doesn't have a lot of public support, at least, to the extent we've received comments. And one thing I'm looking at is, I looked at the design standards. It seems like a storage facility has to front the Deer Creek Road. I guess one thing, what I'm trying to get at is the orientation. Was there any reason why it was oriented along the road, which I assume, might be the source of some of the objections, and then also, in terms of connectivity to the state park on the other side, that would be the route that that any trail or easement would have to cross versus, fronting the interstate or something like that, where, sort of more on the north side of the parcel versus on the east side.
A couple things. Bob Brew's comments, the neighbor to the east of us, he provided the same comments for the solar array, and they negotiated and built a big barn because they were going to have that soil. And so I don't think he's generally opposed to it. The neighbor across, he's just looking for a pretty large berm, and for us, that would be difficult to accomplish. Regarding what the Parks Department had said, and Lauren had showed an exhibit, they would like they'd like to negotiate a trail route of one of three ways. In our site, as shown, you can look at them. They're in the hardest one to see is the one that they actually ended up kind of having a preliminary agreement on with the solar firm, and that's along. I'm just going to go up and point here, but along the southern boundary of the site. Directly adjacent to it. That's the one that the solar farm said, hey, that would make sense. The one in the middle goes right through their solar farm and said, hey, that wasn't going to work. But and then the option C goes along. That's the least desirable from the park's standpoint. That's my understanding. All our layout accommodates all of those, and so or could accommodate any of those. We're leaving big swaths of land on either side. Just being up against the road makes sense from our standpoint when you're constructing it. Then you're not building a road in further to the west. And so if I understood that right, that's why we're keeping it there. It's also flat up in there. There is a grade that goes upwards as we start to get past our 8 acres. We start to get into it a little bit where our fence is at, but it does climb a bit. Actually more deceiving, it's more than you'd think actually if you look at it and go walk around there. It's large enough where it's got some pretty cool features back there, and we're not planning to do with this project to do anything with that. And so I'm not sure I got all your questions right. Gary and his wife, Judy, I think, those are the comments we received. I read them. I think they're a little bit unfortunate. I do see benefits to there being this project here. I think, well, we don't sit here today and we don't have 20, 30, 40, 60 Canyon River neighbor residents here complaining about the project. That when I represent projects, if somebody doesn't come, it's not necessarily a yes vote, but the people who are against it come generally, or they write letters, and so we have those here. But it's not uncommon. We were doing some work in Canyon River, and there's maybe 40, 50, 60 people there, talking about what was going on there. I could see this storage unit facility being similar colors to theirs. They've got a kind of a green and browns and pretty. I don't know if woodsy's the right color, but they have, a kind of theme there. And in my opinion, I could see a theme similar to that here where, somebody from over there would feel pretty good about coming, right down the road and coming over here. So I don't know if I got everything there, Babbitt, but.
Thanks.
And you did address asking about the per zoning. The project does need to front a designated collector or arterial street, so it does need to be along the roadway there. So.
Any other questions or discussion? Andy?
I'm supportive of the project. I don't see an issue. The only one I debate a little bit is the fence, and I could go with the staff's recommendation to a barbed wire on the top to a 10-footer personally. So I don't know what others feel about the fence, but I could go one of three ways on the fence.
I'll try this one again until it runs out. What I was going to say, Andy, is I think, and again, I'm not a wildlife expert by any means, don't profess to be one, but if they have the 75% opacity, it's my understanding the more that the wildlife can't see through a fence, the more likely they are not to try and jump over it because they don't know what's on the other side. And so I think that, I'm with you on that is, if they have a 75%, fence and it's 8 feet with barbed wire on it, I don't have too much of a problem with that. If it's 10 feet, in this location, given the surrounding territory around it and everything, I understand why the applicant may request to have a taller fence in that situation. It is an area that would be more prone towards somebody trying to scale the fence, in my opinion. So I can understand the reason why they're asking for that. So again, that I can completely understand it, and I would like to hear others, weigh in on that and tell us, what your feelings are on that.
Would you want barbed wire on the fence if it was 10 feet tall as well?
Yes, we would. We would want our preference would be have the top strand barbed wire. Yeah, absolutely. And so that would be our ultimate preference, I think. And that's our preference. And if it's 8 foot, we'd like it to have barbed wire. If it's 10 foot, we'd like it to have barbed wire. But we're here at your mercy and hoping, seeking approval and understanding or appreciating your comments. So.
Yeah. So, and as I understand in your application, it was, the chain link part being around 8 feet and then barbed getting you to that 10-foot fencing. So it wouldn't be 10 feet plus an additional feet for barbed.
Absolutely. Nothing would be over 10 feet. That's the maximum height, and if you get approved, yeah.
So essentially, we're talking about an 8-foot fence, as far as the fencing itself.
Possibly a 7.5 foot if three,
And then
probably
you
a
have
3-strand
You have
stretch of barbed wire.
an arm unit on the top that would.
Exactly.
Okay, just want to make sure that everyone's thinking of that the right way. Yeah, Andy.
I don't know. I mean, FWP makes the comment that, 10 foot is, where was it? With it being paved and things, I don't know if that one talks much about fence. I think that was mostly about trail. For what it's worth, I was just sitting here and I Googled how high can a deer jump, and I saw up to 15 feet actually, but it looked to me like 8 was a pretty common number that's not challenged much. So I can't imagine with a 10-foot fence and 3 strands of barbed wire that many deer are going to be jumping into an asphalt parking lot, in my opinion. And based on the site and the applicant's desire, I would be inclined to propose the 10-foot tall fence with the 3 strands of wire on it, barbed wire, which may be an 8-foot. I don't know. I'm not a fence geometry guy, so I don't know if it's 8 foot of slats and 2 foot to catch the arms, because I wouldn't be surprised that arm isn't at least 18 inches. But nonetheless, the top strand of barbed wire couldn't exceed 10 feet, I guess is what I'm saying. And so if it's a 8-foot fence and a 2-foot arm with barbed wire, an 8.5-foot fence with a 18-inch arm, I don't know that I care whether it's 8 or 8.5, just so that it didn't exceed 10 feet in total height.
Any other discussion about the fence?
I guess my comment about the fence height, a 10-foot fence is pretty significant. It's taller than the height of this room. The doors you're looking at on the side of this room are probably 7 feet. So you're talking, even if you go to 8, you're up above that. I'm kind of leaning in a couple different directions as well, Andy, but that's just a comment I wanted people to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I certainly appreciate, and the neighbor's going to see that fence and that sort of thing, and I can understand that. I mean, I think the fence would have an appearance of being an 8-foot fence. That the top of it would have a lot of opacity to it. If you leave the top and the arms, they're pretty open. So I could see having an 8-foot tall fence and maybe it's 9.5 feet tall, something not exceeding 10, but I think that top 18 inches or 2 foot is pretty open aired. So it doesn't have quite the prominence, if you will, of a wall.
Totally agree. I'm just saying that the slats will be taller than these doors by a foot. These doors are 7 feet, so you're going to have 8 feet of slat, and then you're going to have 2 more feet of barbed wire, or a foot.
So that wall height would probably be about the height of the slats, don't you think? That drop ceiling's probably 8 feet in here, would be my guess.
No,
It's taller than 8.
Yeah, it's taller than 8. So the doors are probably 7. So probably got 2 feet or something above them.
Yeah.
You're talking about a fence that's taller than the room, but like you're saying, the slats
Yeah.
will be only about a foot taller than the doors. They wouldn't be the full 10. So the appearance of the fence, as far as opacity versus transparency, you're seeing mostly.
And my
8 foot.
concern comes from that of some protection of the wildlife. The other is the security of the site, because it is in an area that's probably not going to be lit. I guess we didn't see any lighting plans. There's some open storage look to it to me as well, which could be more inviting for people to be trying to get in if there's openness, because I saw some of those units appear to be open. So I guess for the security of it, like I said, when I opened it up though, if I'm the only one of that, I'm fine to have the 8-foot smooth, but my preference would probably be the 10-foot max with wire on the top, stranded barbed wire.
I would lean with the staff recommendation just because it seemed like, and I was trying to find the FWP, not the one here, but the other one where they talked about the fencing. Based on the opacity and lack of vegetation, it doesn't seem like wildlife is a huge concern. And I mean, recognize that the parcel is sort of in an isolated area, but, oh, okay, it was in there. Okay, thanks.
The staff report. in the very
It wasn't a
last-
separate letter.
No, it was the staff report.
Yeah. I mean, you raise a good point about just not the wildlife concern, but the wild people concern maybe. I don't know, with cameras and so forth getting cheaper and cheaper every day, if, a huge fence of the height that we're talking about is necessary. So that's why I'm leaning towards staff's recommendation.
Yeah, and I would just point out, just to make sure everyone's on the same page here, that we are, all in agreement that we're going to be looking at a variance for the fence height. Because because really what we're talking about, anything over 6 is a variance. So if it's 7, if it's 8, if it's 9, if it's 10, it's all the same regarding the finding of facts with regard to, either granting or not granting the variance. So keep that in mind in your deliberations, that what they're asking for is something more. The staff has said, yes, we agree they should have something more. The point is how much more, okay? So let's just make sure that we're all in the same page on that. Any other discussion points?
So Mark, were you saying you were all right with them having a 10-foot high fence with the barbed wire, or did you want the variance?
I was trying to get confirmation of what a 10-foot high fence was. I mean, now I understand it to mean, and again, please correct me, my understanding now is that it's an 8-foot fence potentially with these arms on it. And I was going to ask for if in the ordinance, if we have a definition of fence that spells out how it's to be measured to make sure that we are following what we're supposed to. Because my other concern would be, is that to the top of what? I mean, I guess I didn't take the time to look that up, and Lauren, if you can help us with that, I just want to make sure we're following the requirements on that as far as the definition for the fence. How it's to be measured.
Just add, even if it's not clear in zoning, we'd be willing to, if that's important, to accept a condition that says no portion of the fence, it can exceed 10 feet. But strand, arm, whatever.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because again, I don't want there to be a decision made and then have the potential for it to be interpreted one way when it was meant another. So I just want to make sure that we're clear.
I understand. Yeah, and there's nothing exactly in zoning that how we measure fencing, but as we see it with a condition, the max height would be 8 feet tall, so that would be including the barbed wire fencing.
Okay, thank you. Ryan?
I was going to move on to another question if we're done with the fence, but if people still want to talk about it.
I guess my thought would be is I might make a motion that we could discuss to recommend a modification to the condition, see if it gets a second discussion. If not, then it's kind of dead. But I can do that after your other one.
Okay, it's pretty simple. I was just, Paul, this is probably a quick question for you, but I was just wondering if you guys have any idea of the anticipated usage of those parking spots? I mean, 10 spots seems like a lot still.
10 is a lot, and we think, I think that's a lot, and we just felt like that's sufficient for somebody to kind of get and turn around, and it kind of creates a big open space there. So if somebody pulled an RV up, say, and they couldn't get through for whatever reason, hadn't paid the bill or whatever, they could get out. So that's why we aren't saying, hey, let's have. We probably need 2, 3, 4 maybe on a good day, with people lined up to get there. Really only going there for the off chance you're going to talk to somebody at the office, or if you're going to, pay the kiosk or whatnot to get a code. So it is quite a bit, but we think that provides a big space there that will be useful for our design.
Thanks.
And I'm going to put out there, since we do have 3 separate motions here to make it less confusing, we can maybe start with, voting on the actual special exception itself, because I guess if that were to fail, then these variances would kind of be obsolete. So just a recommendation.
Yes, and that would allow us to have some separate discussion on these as we move forward as well. So I appreciate that, and that's what we really should do. So if we're getting our questions answered and we're feeling pretty close, then I think really what we need to see is, first of all, a motion potentially on the special exception request, and we can move forward from there. And we'd just like to handle that first. If that passes, then there's reason to go forward with the remainder of the variance request. So if anyone wants to make a motion, we can start there.
I'll go ahead and make the motion, but we talked earlier and just want to confirm, well, I guess I'll make the motion and then we could discuss. Just the additional condition that it be limited to the submitted plan in terms of the acreage and not for the full 60 acres of the lot. I move that the Board of Adjustment approve the special exception request to allow for a residential mini warehouse with 2 conditions. The first being all other necessary permits administered by agencies other than Community and Planning Services shall be obtained by the property owner or designated representative. These permits may include, but are not limited to, building, electrical, mechanical, approach, and sanitation permits. And the second condition would that the
Yeah. And we'll probably, because that'll pertain to the fencing, so.
it was going to be on the not that second condition, but the condition on the
Oh, okay.
and that it be limited to the site plan as submitted.
So we have a motion that is the staff's recommendation and a condition on it for that the special exception will be subject to this proposal for this project on this piece of property, okay? Does that seem clear enough? Okay. So, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on this motion? Any clarity need to be provided on it?
I just have one clarifying thing that maybe might be useful. Babak, I think your intent on limiting the second condition to the site plan is the scope of the site plan, the area around it, not the exact layout of the site plan.
Correct.
So I don't know if we should add scope as a word in there, just to be clear, because I don't want these guys to then be limited legally to exactly the layout they just showed us if they're still in development.
I'm happy to modify that second condition to state that the special exemption be granted, but the condition be limited to the scope of the site plan. The scope of the special condition be limited to the site plan. Does that work for staff? Unless staff has a different.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Okay. So seeing that we changed this motion, can I have another second on that? Okay, so we have a motion and a second for clarity on the floor. No additional discussion, so can we go ahead and get a roll call vote on this first vote, please?
Mark Kobos,
Yes.
Andy Medford,
Yes.
Babak Raskford,
Yes.
Ryan Schumacher,
Yes.
Maggie McCall.
Yes.
With all ayes, it passes.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to the second portion with regard to this project and having to do with the variance with regard to the fencing height. So Andy, you said would we like to make a motion on this and see where it goes? Sure. Okay.
Had crafted this here. There we go. So my motion would be to amend the staff's recommended condition as follows. The fence surrounding the perimeter of the storage unit facility shall be a total maximum height of 10 feet tall, including any barbed wire, period. The fence will be reviewed during zoning compliance permit review, period. The fence will meet the 75% opacity requirements per section 3.05B of Missoula County zoning regulations.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Do you have any discussion? I will provide a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
We need to clarify in there about the top level being barbed or not.
In Andy's language that he used, he is intending that it's leaving that up to the project of what they're going to use there. My understanding is that true?
That was my intention, that I did not remove the requirement to have the top be barbless. And my concept was based on the fact that adding that additional height is more likely to deter anything from trying to jump it. The type of facility that's in there, they're not putting in the rose garden or some attractant to them or something that was going to draw them in, and by elevating that height, I think the wildlife concern to me is pretty minimal, and due to the risk of the potential, exposure it might have for people and security of the site, that is why I think that I left it that way.
So right now we have a motion and we have a second. Any other discussion? Okay, so can we have a roll call vote on that motion, please?
Andy Medford,
Yes.
Ryan Schumacher,
Yes.
Babak Roskafard,
No.
Maggie McCall,
Yes.
Mark Kobos.
Yes.
4 yeses and 1 no, it does pass.
Okay, so that variance for the fence is approved at this time. And so I guess
So I guess we would need to vote on the variance of the fence now with that modified condition. And so I would like to make a motion that I move the Board of Adjustment conditionally approve the variance from Missoula County zoning regulation 3.05B3 to exceed the fence height requirement of 6 feet and to allow for a 10-foot in height.
okay, so we now have motion. We have a second on that one.
Second.
There is a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and have a roll call vote again, please.
Andy Medford,
Yes.
Maggie McCall,
Yes.
Ryan Schumacher,
Yes.
Babak Roskafard,
No.
Mark Kobos.
Yes.
4 ayes and 1 no, it does pass.
Okay. So now we need to deal with the variance with regard to the parking stalls. So any discussion about that before we start out? Okay, do I hear a motion for that one?
I'll move that, sorry, I was just distracted by whether we needed the staff's condition, I guess, on the motion that just got approved, I guess, the first recommendation. Do we need that on the fencing? Sorry.
On the parking?
Correct, but we didn't have the condition on the fencing. We just had, there's 2 conditions. We had the second as modified.
Yeah, we'll need the first one as well, the necessary permits condition.
So on the fencing?
Yeah.
Okay. So Andy, if you want to go ahead and, what they're saying is that we need to get the condition number 1 on the fence as far as the permitting and the like.
Okay, I move that all necessary permits administered by agencies other than Community and Planning Services shall be obtained by the property owners or designated representative. These permits may include, but are not limited to, building, electrical, mechanical approach, and sanitation permits.
Okay, so
I guess I'm a little confused what I'm doing because I'm not sure why we're doing it, but
Yeah, I don't think that we need
it seems
that.
like to me we approved the project and said, go get all your necessary permits, and that was already approved.
Yeah. That's
And we
probably
approved a
that.
variance for a fence
Yeah.
and said,
that-
here's the conditions of it. So I'm confused why I'm adding condition 1 to a fence requirement
you're-
myself.
Yeah, you're probably right on that.
I'll
Now that
do-
I hear
I'll
it.
do as instructed,
No,
but I don't
yeah,
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I think
now that
we're
you're
gonna-
reading that, that is making more.
Yeah, if
The-
we're going to do that, then we need to
yes.
start over and
Yeah. That
Make a new
condition's
motion.
more per the actual special exception itself.
Only
for
thing
the-
I could say, if it would make it feel better, is to say, it, or fencing permits if required.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is
Yeah.
one required. It's probably part of the building permit.
Yeah. Yeah. It will all be part of the building permit. So yeah, like you said, yeah.
If that's the case, I'd like to withdraw that statement.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry about that.
no, no problem. So now,
I'd like to move that the Board of Adjustment approve the variance request to allow for 10 parking spaces. The property is legally described as Track 1 of Certificate of Survey 5850 in Zone C RR1 Residential. This approval is based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law found in the staff report and public testimony.
okay, thank you. So we have a motion for the parking with regard to a variance on the number of stalls. So
Second.
do you have a second? Any discussion? Okay, we have a roll call vote again on that.
Andy Bedford,
Yes.
Babbitt Graskafard,
Yes.
Ryan Schumacher,
Yes.
Maggie McCall,
Yes.
Mark Kobos.
Yes.
All ayes.
So the variance for the parking is approved. So, and I think we're going to have a talk with ourselves and with staff on some of these when we want to break them apart too.
Yeah,
Make
sorry. Yeah, thanks for working through it. It gets a little bit confusing when we've got multiple motions, and this one's kind of unique in having three different, there's not too many that come about that have multiple motions to make, but
No, I agree.
clarify that in the future.
For clarity's sake, we may want to just go through that a little bit more before we get to the voting stage in future meetings, so, to provide clarity, so again, so your variances are approved, and so is your special exception. So thank you for coming here and for your testimony tonight. So we're going to move forward at this time. So do we have any old business? So I think you sent out an email regarding Jamie not being able to be here tonight, so that's going to get pushed till next month. Okay. So nothing to talk to you about old business?
Correct. And let's see, and just to confirm that the Board of Adjustment bylaw amendments will be discussed at the August 15th Board of Adjustment meeting.
That's great.
So any new business or staff announcements for this go-around this month? Okay. All right, so then we can be adjourned. Thank you all. Sorry if it was confusing tonight. Okay.